Hello, this is Joe Hoyle at the University of Richmond, the author of your financial accounting textbook, and we're here to talk about why people should trust financial statements. How does the system work so that decision makers are willing to risk their money based upon the information they get in financial accounting? We're now going to look at the second video in this chapter, where your uncle starts talking about if they grow large enough, they will fall under the rules of the Securities and Exchange Commission. And your uncle is very interested in what that means and where did it come from. To understand the SEC, you really need to go back to the stock market crash in 1929. As you probably know, in 1929, the stock market just simply crashed. And as a result, the economy, or going along with that, the economy fell into the Great Depression, which lasted for decades. During that time, people were afraid to put their money into stocks. People were afraid to invest because they had seen the stock market crash. And since the stock market had crashed, they understood they could lose their money. So basically, one of the things that happened that really fed into the Great Depression was that people were afraid to invest. And therefore, in a capitalistic society like ours, it was impossible to get enough money for businesses to grow. And that simply won't work. You have to have people in a capitalistic society who are willing to put their money into the businesses. Congress needed some way to encourage people to feel that they were safe to go back into the stock market. They passed many laws, but one of those created the Securities and Exchange Commission. And basically the SEC was put in charge legally of everything having to do with the public sale of securities. Now, when we talk about securities in this book, we're primarily talking about stocks, the common stock, the ownership shares of a company. As I'm sure you realize, many companies sell their ownership shares on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ. Millions of shares are exchanged every day. That market helps to bring money into the economy. But securities go beyond that. Other companies also sell debt instruments that we call bonds. So you could buy the ownership shares of a company, or you could buy the debt of a company. Either way, it's a security, and it's sold publicly on a market. The Securities and Exchange Commission is in charge of that entire process, and they're in charge of making sure it works fairly and that people don't get cheated. And their main goal is for everyone to believe it's a fair system. Now, the Securities and Exchange Commission is a huge organization with a large amount of rules and guidance. I simply want to let you know their primary function is to make sure these markets function well and people feel that they can trust what they get when they get information. So the Securities and Exchange Commission creates rules, and those rules tell the companies what information they must make public. In that way, the outsiders know that they're getting enough information to be able to make good decisions. In addition, the Securities and Exchange Commission watches over certain activities like inside trading, where people inside a company use the information that they have in order to get an unfair advantage. We might say that the real words that we associate with the SEC is fairness, that everybody has all the information that they need, and nobody has an unfair advantage by having additional information. So although you could be in business forever and not come in contact with the SEC, I think it's important for you to understand that that is the body that oversees the entire process. And whenever anything goes wrong, it's the SEC's responsibility to make sure it's made correct. This is Joe Hoyle at the University of Richmond. We're talking with you today about why people trust financial statements enough that they're willing to take their hard-earned money and invest it in the securities of a company. Why are they willing to take those financial statements and believe in them? And certainly, this all comes back to the work of the Securities and Exchange Commission.